Did Mark Schlereth just reveal the truth about the San Francisco 49ers quarterback competition this past offseason? Now, as many of you guys remember, and probably have put it in your rear view because we're on a playoff run right now, but Mark Schlereth talked about it on his podcast in regards to Sam Darnold and Darnold playing in that season finale against the Rams. And he said some interesting things about the thought and the plan for Sam Darnold when he came to the San Francisco 49ers. And it sounds like Sam was absolutely competing for the starting job. Take a listen to what Mark Schlereth had to say in regards to the ins and outs of this quarterback competition this summer, and then we'll react to it on the other side. Take a listen right here.
Here's what I want to say. I think that what Sam Darnold went through this year and the way he's had this year of football rehab, and I probably spent 20 minutes on the field talking to Sam before the game, and I talked ad nauseum to Kyle Shanahan about Sam. Sam turned down better opportunities to go in and compete for a starting job, to come to San Francisco to compete with Trey Lance, to compete with the quarterbacks that were here, because he felt like he could beat those guys out. He turned down more money for different organizations to come play for Kyle Shanahan to get a year of football rehab. And Kyle told him, hey, listen, you're not going to be able to beat Brock Purdy out in practice because he's earned that. You're going to have to outplay him in the preseason. And kind of that's the way they went into this thing. And Sam was like, all right, but I feel like I can beat everybody else out. So he did. They ended up moving Trey Lance to Dallas, who's, I don't even know that he dresses, but anyhow. So that was really cool. Kyle Shanahan said to me, he said, listen, this guy, Sam Darnold, is a baller. He is smart. He's prepared. He shows up. He's the first guy in the locker room. George Kittle told me, man, this guy is the first dude. Like, I'm like number 4 or 5 in the locker room. He's always there. He's always prepped. Brock Purdy told me on Saturday nights, he pulls Brock aside, goes through the entire game plan. What are you seeing? What are you thinking on this? What do you think about this? Through the entirety of the game plan. Because he's been imperative. I come off the field. He's number 1. He's pumping me up. Number 2, after we meet with Brian Greasy, he goes over what he sees, what he thinks. Like, this guy is a consummate professional, and he can spin it. Now, Kyle told me, he goes, he started off, in a bad situation with the Jets. Jeremy Bates was their offense coordinator at the time, and Jeremy Bates was I guess, a kind of an Adam Gase type of guy. And Kyle was just like, he was operating the Peyton Manning offense, trying to operate as a rookie, the Peyton Manning offense, which is, let's stay stagnant. Let's not motion everybody. Pre-snap, decide what they're in, and, and then exploit what they're like. Kyle Shanahan was like, there's really only one dude that can play the Peyton Manning offense. That's Peyton Manning. Like, it's just, there's just too much shit for anybody else. And so this is the first time that he's really been through a true progression offense. 1, 2, 3, try to get through your progressions. Really doesn't matter what the coverage is, had a running game and all this kind of stuff. So he was just like, man, this offense is so intense. It's so in depth. And every day you come in, they're putting something new on your plate. It challenges you as a quarterback. It makes you have to think and study and prepare and be ready to roll on Sundays. And so here's a guy that is really exposed for the first time in his career as a, first round, 3rd overall guy that really didn't pan out, that was really exposed to a traditional, really good NFL offense. I think that he is going to be a guy that is going to get an opportunity to play for somebody. And I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to see kind of blossom toward the end of his career.
And by the way, you're setting all this up, and I don't disagree with any of it. You might actually see a pretty good bidding war for this guy, because he's got the Kyle Shanahan sort of seal of approval, if you will, endorsement. And right. I think people around the league will respect how San Francisco does things, and they're going to look at Sam Darnold as the guy that's ready to blossom.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that that's going to be big.
I think one of the key things that Mark Schlereth was talking about was that Sam Darnold was brought in here to compete with Brock Purdy, not just Trey Lance. And I think that was part of the narrative this offseason is that when the 49ers signed Sam Darnold, they got him for a steal of a price. And as you heard from Schlereth, he turned down other teams to be able to come into this system and learn from Kyle Shanahan and the rest of these, with these offensive players and weapons and all those different types of things. But it doesn't sound like he was coming in just to compete with Trey Lance, which I think was the thought process. It does sound like he had an opportunity to really compete for the starting job with Brock Purdy and had an opportunity to do so throughout the preseason. And again, Mark Schlereth, to me, is a pretty credible source. He is a former player. He clearly talks to these guys. He calls games. He has relationships with them. And I do not think that in any stretch or form of imagination that he's looking for clicks, he's looking for views, anything like that. I think he's being able to give us a look behind the curtain at what really the thought process was throughout that time. And for us, we were just, I believe, in the belief of Brock Purdy's just getting healthy. He's just kind of get back from the UCL surgery, right? All those different types of things. But maybe there was more to the competition in training camp. Maybe it was all these guys pushing on each other to improve and to be better. Obviously, as we know, Brock Purdy remained the starter, didn't give up the starting job, and he's cruised through this season, being an MVP frontrunner for a good portion of it, and deservingly so. I mean, Brock was the best quarterback throughout training camp. We saw Brock Purdy get that one series against the Denver Broncos where he leads them right down the field. So I don't think Sam Darnold, although he had some good throws and good plays in that preseason, I think to that one throw he had down the right sideline to Ronnie Bell, that was just an absolute rope. I don't think there was really a ton that Sam Darnold did to really separate himself, at least from Brock Purdy. But clearly, he did enough to separate himself from Trey Lance. And as we know, Trey Lance is no longer on the roster because I believe Sam Darnold truthfully beat him out. And so I just found this little nugget interesting in the way he talked about it. And, Sam was coming in here to compete for the starting job. And again, speaks to how Brock Purdy, Brock, hell of a job by Brock to, go into this offseason, having to come back from the UCL, wasn't even able to practice every day. And if you think about the split and the way it was set up, every single quarterback had an opportunity to lead practices because it was Brock Purdy 2 days on where he would take the starting job. Then it was Sam Darnold and Trey Lance behind Brock that would rotate. And then when Brock would take the third day off, it would be a rotation between Trey and Sam getting to run with the ones. So if you really break it out over training camp, it was a constant rotation for the most part. And I think it based on what Mark is saying, I believe him. I think Sam came in here to compete. And I do think, again, you have to give a ton of credit to Brock Purdy for not only having to rehab throughout this period, but also having to compete. And hey, maybe it made him better. Maybe it pushed him harder. But nonetheless, we know what Brock Purdy has been able to do and what he's been able to accomplish. And the other thing that they were talking about was the potential that Sam Darnold could be a starter or get a job in this coming year. And again, we know Kyle has an affinity for Sam Darnold and always has. He tried to trade for him in 2021, according to reports. And so Kyle finally got him, but he couldn't beat out Brock. And you've got to give a ton of credit to Brock. But I think also too, in what you hear from Mark Schlereth, it sounds like Sam's been a great teammate. Sounds like Sam has been a great person in that room with Brock to help push Brock forward and continue to elevate Brock's game. And I think that's a huge element too of this kind of behind the scenes story. Is sounds like Sam's a great teammate. So he might get an opportunity with another team coming up here. Obviously, he got to play against the Rams And, we know that game for Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz was huge. Might not have mattered for the fan base, but we know for those guys it mattered. And they were playing like it. So for the most part, Sam played decently. He actually played really well for the most part. He had the fumble there at the end when they're trying to put together the drive, but hey, so it'll be interesting to see. But I just thought it was kind of fascinating to hear behind the scenes of something that we were in the thick of, in the middle of, and so that's why it stands out to me. But what did you think of what Mark Schlereth had to say? What do you think about what he said about the competition? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.